All right, I'm going to call the meeting to order of the Jefferson Parish Office of Inspector General Quality Assurance Review Committee. This is our second public meeting. Had one last year, and this is our second one this year. First of all, I'd like to apologize to everybody for the lateness of the meeting. We were supposed to have this a couple of months ago, but due to the virus, we've had holdups. I've had holdups, anyway. We have issued our reports. If anybody needs a report, I think there's some right on the table. My report over here has the response of did yours have the response also?
Yeah, you mean the letter response?
The IG's response.
Oh, yeah, the IG, yeah.
Yeah, mine has a copy of the IG's response also.
This is the one I built into the report, so it may be two different.
Pardon?
These are ones I had built into mine, so I don't know, you may have little additional things, so.
All right. Last year I went through the whole and read through the whole report. I'm not going to do that this year. If y'all would like to read the report, you're certainly welcome to do so. I will, however, read the conclusion to the report, which is essentially our findings. Well, can y'all hear me with this mask? Yeah. Okay. For the second consecutive year, the committee's review, Inspector General David McClintock and his staff of professionals were at all times accessible, responsive, candid, clear, helpful, and eager to provide whatever information we requested in order to make our second review more complete, accurate, and effective. Even more importantly, and revealing, the responsiveness of the IG and his office of outstanding professionals was demonstrated unfailingly and swiftly, as can be seen in the IG's response to last year's recommendation, less than 2 weeks following receipt of those, as well as his continued availability to respond to any questions at any time, despite the challenges of COVID-19. As citizens of Jefferson Parish, we, the members of the Quality Assurance Review Committee, have an interest shared with all those who live and work here in parish government, which is honest, efficient, transparent, and responsive to the needs of all. The Office of the Inspector General continues to deliver accountability and oversight of government functions in positive, constructive ways by operating fairly and without political or personal agendas, thus maintaining productive dialogues with all branches with which it interacts. Moreover, it does so while maintaining adequate distance and objectivity to enable it to effectively demand accountability and point out shortcomings in components and processes in need of repair when necessary. We are grateful for and humbled by the honor and privilege to have the trust of the parish and citizens we serve in this role, and we thank the Inspector General and his excellent team for their work, cooperation, and outstanding public service. We commend and offer our gratitude to Inspector General McClintock and his entire staff for a job well done in service to us all. And that's generally our opinion with regard to the Inspector General. We all have been very impressed with his level of competence, his professionalism, etc. Do any of the committee have any comments they would like to make?
The only comment I would have is, we appreciate the work of the IG's office and of the Ethics Commission. The IG's office, that's not an easy job. When you go to investigate something, to go to do an audit, you don't get welcomed with open arms. It's a difficult job. And we just appreciate the work that y'all do.
For whatever it's worth, I'll make a couple of observations. First of all, it's an honor to work with these two men that I get to work with on the committee for the second year in a row. Thank you, Carol. Thank you for your trust for everyone. The trust you all have placed in us is appreciated by all of us. Trust me. I do want to say, you know, I spent a long time. I'm now with the firm of Butler Snow, and Butler Snow has been great in allowing me to do this and encouraging me to do this. But I spent most of my adult life in public service, and I've watched, as we all have, so many public positions, so many public missions devolve into or descend into political battles and things like that to the point where, you know, government now serves politics more than politics serving government. And I think to see this Inspector General, see Dave McClintock, and to see all these people, his team, and others who you don't see today who work here for him, who fearlessly, as Duke and John mentioned, go out, you know, and do hard jobs when nobody's happy to see them, and have to make difficult calls, sometimes critical, sometimes not, but never doing it with any rancor. In fact, to the contrary, always trying to make their findings simply constructive so that those findings can right things that are not right, can improve government and its efficiency, and can eliminate or at least significantly reduce to the extent possible fraud, waste, and abuse. So to see that constructive work that this office does under this leadership, which you're doing now for quite some time, and to see it done effectively and with guts, but without any rancor whatsoever, it's impressive, and it's something that other people in the executive, legislative, and judicial branches ought to take note of, because they could follow this lead. So it's a pleasure to be here and see such a great IG's office, and this is a great parish.
One last thing from me, I'd like to thank Mr. Letton, who has put the words to paper of all our committee thoughts. He did it last year, he did it this year, and I'd like to publicly thank him. He's done a very good job. I would call on Mr. McClintock to make any responses that he would like to make.
Thank you, Chairman Benz, Mr. Letton, and Mr. McConnell, for your service. I think the first thing I want to say is on behalf of the team, because I'm nothing without the team, and everything that you said is true, but it's true of the folks behind me, not necessarily of me. And it's also true of the current members of the Ethics Commission, as well as the former chair that's in the room as well. This is not something that can be accomplished by any one person or few people. This is a collaborative thing, and we've been blessed with good leadership from the beginning. If it would be acceptable, Chairman Benz, I would like to go through the findings in a summarized, the questions in a summarized component, because I think what my observation is of you, since we're trading observations, is the Inspector General's office everywhere, not just here, is often the source of an opinion formed over a specific issue, a little myopic slice of something that we do by somebody who's impacted on the other side. And rarely do we get the opportunity to have someone examine a body of work. And this is now the second year that you three have had the opportunity to examine everything we do in a year. And that is the type of knowledge that's needed to form an opinion about an office that does a job that I think was accurately stated is not necessarily always welcome. So with that in mind, the beauty of what the Quality Assurance Review Committee has done now for its second year is to render a series of questions and opinions through those questions on issues that are a tier deeper, that are below that surface level of the reports, that functional process piece of what can help make this process better. And this process is both our side and the parish's side as well, and how well we both communicate and coordinate to solve problems that are identified. And to me, that is a very unique thing that we don't get the opportunity to do very often. So at the chairman's pleasure, I can touch on each piece, or you can do it and we can have dialogue. Is that okay?
You have the floor. Go
Thank you
ahead.
very much, sir. So the first thing that I want to definitively mention is that I probably spoke too quick last year, because I just accepted most of your recommendations. Yeah, we can do that, we can do that. And I think that what some of the staff and I found pretty quickly was some of them we did do pretty quick. But there was one in particular that was an outstanding observation, and it was for the recommendation tracker, is what we ended up calling it. And that recommendation that was the result of your observations was simply that you need to come up with a way to concisely convey the output of your office. What does that look like? And it doesn't look like any one thing. It looks like the process. So for those that may be listening or may not be familiar with it, when a report's issued, there are recipients of that report. Typically in the parish, it is the council, it is the administration, it is the relevant department heads. Now we have a new tier where it might also be individuals who are on the outside, vendors, etc. Those individuals receive a report. The customary thing that is done in the business is they engage in a meeting with us very early on. We discuss anything that may not be clear. They then would engage in their own internal deliberations and generate a response. They may like what we did, they may not like what we did. All of that is fair game, but they generate a written response followed by a corrective action program of some kind. That corrective action is designed to give the public very clear and concise synopsis of, did you accept it, yes or no? Are you going to make a change? And if so, what is it? How long do you anticipate that change to be implemented? How long should we wait for it to be implemented? And who is responsible? So those are the pieces of information that are necessary for the public to provide accountability, and also for us to come behind and do a follow-up to figure out, was it accomplished or wasn't it accomplished? And they're flexible as well. You can put in changes. You can say we need more time, or we're switching how we're gonna bite this off. But having a document and a process that articulates all of those pieces, when you're talking about 7 council members, a parish president, multiple department heads, and occasionally people on the outside, ended up not being a real easy task. But you guys asked us to do it, and I said I would. What I thought was going to be a 3-4 week project ended up being about a 7 or 8 month project. That project can now be found by going to jpoig.net, hitting the bright yellow recommendation tracker on the right side, and it's updated about every quarter. Pardon me 1 second, let me grab the right document. And I do appreciate your indulgence, because this has been a ton of work, but we've gotten very, very good reviews on it. So what someone will find today, if they were to go to that, is that there have been post-report meetings asked for in 69% of our report issuances. That may not sound very high, and I'd love to get it higher, and that'll come over time. We've had an extremely good relationship with the new administration. Things are trending in a fantastic direction. But when you consider 2.5 years ago, the parish president was not responding to any of our reports, or very few for a long period of time. We've gone from a below 35, 40% meeting dynamic to 69%. And that's a fantastic thing, because you can't solve a problem unless you're communicating. So very happy to see that. Corrective action plans, we're still working on that dynamic a little bit. It is up some. It's up 3% from where it was when we first put this out. The number of written responses is an interesting dynamic. It's listed at 17% right now. I want to talk about that just briefly, because it parlays straight into one of your most insightful questions to me this cycle. We have a system that everyone in the room is familiar as a parish strong system. But from an oversight perspective, a parish strong system is the most difficult system to work in, because there's not a mayor or a strong county executive that can fix it all themselves. The administration handles the administrative side of things and all the employees, but the power rests in the council. Well, in Jefferson Parish, we have 5 council districts that are geographically based and 2 at-larges that are just that, at-large. They have no geographic home, per se. So when you render a report that includes solutions that by their nature can be heavily impacted or driven by the council, one asks themselves, which council person should respond to this? Because we can't expect them to meet outside of a public meeting, have a discussion, and come to a result and publish it. That wouldn't go very well with the public meetings law. But most of our recommendations involve parish-wide issues, and all of the district council people probably have some degree of legitimacy in the position that, what am I going to do as council district 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5 to say how the whole parish should be fixed? I can talk about my district, but this isn't about my district. This is about the whole parish. We've had conversations on and off over the years about maybe trying to find a way to, by ordinance or by charter amendment, resting that responsibility with one of the at-larges. It can go back and forth. But that is the fundamental issue that I see in Jefferson Parish with engaging the council in a meaningful sense. There is not an easy way for us to get clear direction from the council on many of our recommendations, despite the fact that a lot of it can be done by the council. So the recommendation tracker really brings that out. It demonstrates by that number, and that's why it's low, because we very rarely get responses from council people. We do, but very rarely, and quite frankly, many of the ones that we did get came from Cynthia Lee Shang when she was sitting on the council. She would step out there and write those from time to time. Now she's in the parish president's office, and things are going fine from that perspective. But this single document is the best guide to anyone who wants to see oversight increased in the parish, and it is the foundation to begin a discussion on how to do that better, how to communicate better, because it's not going to be an easy fix. This year you asked about the IG's authority and what it consists of in arrest powers. Gave me an opportunity to simply articulate that we are designated as law enforcement, but we are not sworn, we do not carry firearms, and we do not make arrest. Some people might say, then why are you even designated law enforcement? That is a veneer question with a deep answer. The reality of it is that it opens the door for us to access all sorts of law enforcement sensitive material. All kinds of runs and pulls on who has warrants and who's got criminal history and grand jury material, and to work jointly with other departments on law enforcement sensitive issues and criminal investigations. So that authority that's in there is extremely powerful and allows us to step out in those areas when we need to. I also responded in that to be clear, many inspector general's offices do have traditional police authority. I don't know that it's necessarily needed right now the way we're structured. And if they were to give it to me tomorrow, I don't have the funding to make it happen. Running a police department, which is what you would be if you had a single one, requires an entire different level of administration and costs that we do not typically have to deal with. So that is a big question with a fairly concise answer that is simply that we have what we need right now under the current structure. But it's a good question because many IGs have that. Question 2 was, what extent do we coordinate or share information with Jpso? Another good question. It has been asserted over the years that we don't tell them what we need to tell them, and also that we tell them too quick things. I don't think that we have changed our perspective. It is always a judgment call on what you share, because that's based on the value of the information that you receive. If we receive unsubstantiated information, we typically don't waste other jurisdictions' time with that. However, as that continuum starts to move along, either it's a particularly serious allegation or it has additional levels of support, the continuum will get to the point where we will share that rather quickly. Sometimes that develops during a case, and as a matter of fact, the case that was just in the media where there were arrests made was one of those, where the beginning of it looked like a straightforward administrative investigation, and as it built, we found a few areas that turned into criminal, and we turned to Jpso and worked with them off and on over the course of a year and a half, to arrive at a place where it was both a very solid administrative report with meaningful changes to the parish's internal systems, as well as the ability to hold people involved from hold them accountable from a criminal perspective. So that was a good demonstration of how that works, and again, a good question that's not necessarily intuitive to those that aren't in the position. We were also asked about deconfliction, very similar thing. As soon as we get to the point where we believe the information is valuable enough or valid enough, and it is an area where multiple entities may have jurisdiction, we will reach out to them, share what we have, figure out who's going to take the lead, or how we can work jointly, but most definitively for one purpose, which is to make sure we don't do anything that harms an investigation by another agency. And that's been, I think, something that we've done pretty well over the years. There was a question about Geno Inc., and that was an audit that we put out about a year and a half ago that was part of this cycle. I think the salient point for the listener in that is the question was, had we validated some of the information that came back from one of the responses actually by a council member? And the answer was no, because that is the subject of the follow-up review. Follow-up reviews usually occur a year to 18 months out. That one is scheduled for late 2020, early 2021. And it is at that point where we will assess whether the statements made in the response actually bore fruit or not. So that just wasn't quite timely, but it was a good process question. All right, there was another really, I thought, salient point in funding. Boy, we could be here for a while. I will keep that very concise. We had several good discussions during the QAR's due diligence phase, both in person and via phone and by exchanging documents. And I think what came from that discussion, from my perspective, and I responded accordingly, I hope, was that first and foremost, we're driven by the charter. The charter gives us 3 areas of responsibility. I have said since the day that I sat for an interview at the airport hotel with Ms. Suggs and other members of the commission at that time that the parish did not provide adequate funding to do all 3 functions that we are required to do by charter. I don't think that was an intentional thing. I think that's what happened. They rededicated a millage that used to be street lighting to us, and it was what it was. And then they had us come in as candidates, and every one of the candidates, and I know both of the other ones still, we all came to the same conclusion that you can't do 3 functional areas with the amount of money that's provided. So I chose to do the investigation and the audit piece. The performance review piece is unfunded. We do occasionally bite that off via the audit shop. The reality of it is that it's probably another $250,000, something along those lines, that would be required to do it, about $350,000, $400,000. That would allow me to have a very thin performance review shop, 2 people, two reviewers, and 1 supervisor would essentially be what it is. And that brings me immediately into the millage question, and we have chosen the ECC and the IG this year to seek a millage renewal. It's up on November 3rd. We did not choose to seek a millage enhancement for an awful lot of reasons, so we didn't. That's a question of how to seek additional funding, maybe something that we deal with down the road. The QAR's question on that was, have we approached the administration to, and I think it was the council as well, to seek additional funding? The answer that I responded to is that I had conversations with both Parish President Young, Parish President Yenny, and members of the council off and on. We at one point even got to the juncture of our shop, the IG shop, drafting an IGA where we could receive funding from a department head who's no longer with the parish, but at the time was willing to provide that funding but still remain independent. It's a process and a system I've used in the past successfully. At that point, it transitioned from Parish President Young to Parish President Yenny, and Parish President Yenny was not willing to proceed with that. So there are other potential funding mechanisms. None of them have been rolled out, but none of them are actively being discussed at this point. So I just wanted to be clear on that. Let's see. So that covers your question 7. And then question 8, asked by the QAR, was really about regarding the 2019, page 8, respond. Okay, so that was the recommendation tracker. And you were asking about the resulting 231 written responses amounting to 17%. That was what I addressed first. So I think I've touched on all of those questions, all of which I rarely get an opportunity to talk about, and I apologize for monopolizing the mic for a moment, but it's all very good stuff. With that, I would like to turn it back over to the chairman and thank you for your indulgence. Any questions of me at this time?
Your cooperation with President Sheng has been better than it was under the old administration?
Chairman Benz, I haven't received that level of cooperation since the day I left Baltimore City. And that's a positive statement. And I mean that. You know, being able to have candid conversations about how to solve problems and not have the other side of the table looking for misplaced decimal numbers and you know, problems with some small statement we made. Having somebody seen the forest and the trees at the same time is incredibly refreshing. I feel very, very confident we're going to be able to make some headway.
She impressed me last year. Last year when we sent out our reports, we sent it to all council personnel, and she was the only one that responded.
I understand. Yes, so thank you for that
Anybody
question.
else have any questions?
Not on point.
Just a quick observation. And look, and I have my, you know, I'm famous for stating the obvious, right? But the recommendation tracker, I just have to say this for public consumption. I think we all agree. Our request last year, or suggestion, that the IG, that you consider, your office consider tracking, determining to what extent your recommendations were responded to, whatever, was pretty general. It was focused, but it was general. But the way you built that, and again, I wish the press were here for things like this, okay, these positive evolutions. The way you built it, though, was not such a way that you would simply come back to us and say, you know, this councilman, you know, ignored this and this one responded, whatever. You simply built I say simply, it took an enormous amount of work, but you built a beautifully detailed, complex but not complicated, I guess, matrix of ways to simply and objectively track whether you received responses, what the responses were, just as I said, in a very objective way that did not present an opportunity or a need for you or your office to say this person did what he or she shouldn't have and this person didn't. Again, it was consistent with your achieving the best possible efficiency in government, but doing it, again, in a very, very fair-minded, objective way so that the facts speak for themselves. And to me, there's no better, more effective way to conduct an enforcement mission that is consistent with the Inspector General's mission as an internal watchdog than that. Because to have something that is so apolitical and yet so efficient is exactly what government needs. And so the ethics committee, we have great ethics committee, great counsel, great president, and a great IG. And I think we're all just very, very fortunate.
Yeah. You're too kind, and two quick statements there. I think you just found my mantra for 2021, complex but not complicated. I love that. That's what we try to do. We take complex things and turn them into a not complicated product. The other observation I have is that my heart is going to rest a whole lot better now that you don't have a recommendation on how to improve the recommendation tracker. So those are the sweetest words I've heard today.
Saving that for next year.
Thank you for that. Thank you for that. Anything else from the commissioners?
Thank you from all of us.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Do we have any comments from the audience? Either us or the Inspector General?
Thank you, and thank you for your service. I'm Howard Maestri, and I'm the current chair of the Ethics Commission. We have addressed transparency and independence, and we've done what we think is an exceptional job there. I'd like to focus on the office of the Inspector General and for your future insights as we move forward. We're not satisfied that the level of corrective actions are being implemented or being addressed, and we need help in working on that. So if David's asking for the next step to the recommendations tractor, the noted writer of management theory, Peter Drucker, said, what gets measured gets done. So we would see enhancing that report to look at the number of corrective actions that were submitted but then actually implemented. And then what's the quantitative result to the parish and the residents of Jefferson Parish. So anything you can do in your future reviews to help us focus on that, because I think we identify where benefit is, but we're not getting the benefit because the implementation is lacking, okay? The second thing is on page 11, note the questions that you folks asked, and they're very good. And they address the two issues that David talked about. The unfunded portion of the IG office to address the performance review. And the performance review becomes an issue as we move forward. 5 years from now, I would hope that we're on a track to implement that function. So any thoughts that you could give in your future reviews to how we address that? Do we approach the council and ask for additional funding? Do we go back for a millage adjustment, et cetera? Would be very helpful. Okay? Thank you. Thank you for your service.
Thank you, and thank you for your service and your trust.
Anyone else? Well, if there's no other questions, we will adjourn the meeting. The meeting is adjourned.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.